Hi! Today we are going to talk about pulse oximetry as one of the methods frequently used in medicine. And here you can see a special feature. We have brought the corpuls1 and the corpuls3T for you. That is because both devices by default can obtain the same readings. Andi, would you like to tell us what readings are that actually?
I'd love to. Both devices can of course display oxygen saturation by default. This is represented graphically by the pleth curve. Also shown is the peripheral pulse rate and a perfusion index as quality indicator for the measurement. Additionally, to indicate oxygen saturation, you can set a dynamic pulse tone. This tone allows us to detect purely by hearing if the oxygen saturation changes, because this also changes the pitch of the tone. Verena, which sensors are available for these readings?
Well, for one, we have the reusable finger clip. That is, in fact, the sensor I use most often. We attach it at the patient's non-dominant hand because the skin there is less thick, and then either at the middle finger or the ring finger. That is because in adults, the last phalanx of the middle and ring finger is approximately the same size, and we have there the best measuring conditions.
Next, we have the ear clip. It is attached at the ear lobe. And finally, the adhesive sensor. This one is a disposable product, and we have to make sure, when attaching it at a measuring site, that the light source and the sensor are facing directly.
With all sensors, you should make sure that the measuring site is sufficiently perfused and is also clean. If necessary, you can of course clean it beforehand. With the finger clip, we should mention that it can be problematic to use if there is an artificial fingernail or nail varnish. If you check this, you also need to make sure that the plug of the sensor indeed fits the cable at the device.
So now we have a look at the display options and the settings for the corpuls1. Here we have prepared an oximetry setup. Up here we see the oxygen saturation, in the middle the peripheral pulse rate, and on the right the perfusion index. In the lower area there is the display of the pleth curve, or the pulse wave curve. The oxygen saturation is a percentage value. The device measures the hemoglobin saturated with oxygen and puts it into relation with the hemoglobin that is not saturated. This measurement can be complemented with a dynamic pulse tone. When it is activated, you don't have to look at the device, but you can simply hear if there is a change in the oxygen saturation. Besides the oxygen saturation, we see the peripheral pulse rate. This is displayed in pulses per minute. Here, you have to understand that the peripheral pulse rate really only reflects the peripheral signal, and it must not necessarily correspond to the heart rate.
Down here we see the pulse wave curve as well. There too, we can see the pulse itself. On the other hand, we can, by watching the curve amplitude, make statements concerning the perfusion quality. If there is high amplitude in the curve, there is better perfusion. If there is only a low amplitude, the perfusion is not so good. But to be able to assess this even better, we can also look on the top right at the perfusion index. It can show values between 0.1 and 20%, and so I can evaluate, is the measuring site sufficiently perfused to obtain a good quality reading at all? On the other hand, I can use that perfectly as a trend parameter to see how the patient's perfusion is changing. Is it getting better or worse? What we can also do is configure further settings via the menu. Andi, would you like to show us?
Yes, sure. Via the menu, I get to the extended oximetry settings. Here, what pops out first is FastSat. If I activate that, the averaging time is shortened, which the sensor needs to calculate a mean value. This is particularly important in patients in which I need to detect the changes quickly.
What I can also adjust here is the sensitivity. By default, it's set to normal, and for most cases is absolutely sufficient. However, it can also be that I have a patient with bad perfusion. Here, for example, I could set the sensitivity to max. By doing so, I have a better evaluation. A further option would be to set the sensitivity to APOD. This stands for Adaptive Probe Off Detection, so the device can detect quicker if the sensor has slipped off. This is a very good option for children or agitated patients. So, as a short summary, it is important to select and prepare the measuring site correctly, to select the correct sensor, and if necessary, to adjust the settings according to the patient.
Today, we have shown you the standard oximetry. For the extended options of the rainbow technology, just click on the other video. Talking of clicking, why don't you subscribe to our channel? Then you won't miss anything, and then ring the bell. Please also write all your wishes, suggestions, criticisms, etc. into the comments below. We appreciate it. So, bye then, until next time.